What if tension in your body isn't something to fix, but something that's been holding the truth you haven't been able to say? Welcome to Healing Beyond the Symptoms, the podcast that helps people discover the root causes of their health struggles and take back control with science, strategy, and self-awareness. I'm Dr. Leah Hahn, a chiropractor and functional wellness doctor who believes that true healing starts beneath the surface. So let's dive in. Today, I want to talk about something that sits at the core of healing, but often goes unnamed: congruency, or more specifically, what happens in the body when we're living incongruent, when who we are on the inside doesn't quite match how we're living on the outside. Because so many people come into care focused on symptoms, the tension, the anxiety, the fatigue, the patterns that won't seem to shift. And while those are real and valid, what I found is that underneath those symptoms, there's often a deeper conversation happening. Conversation between your nervous system, your stored experiences, and the life you're living right now. We've been taught to see pain as the problem, something to get rid of, something to override. But in the work that I do and what I see over and over again, pain is often not the problem. It's the signal, a signal that something isn't matching, that there's a gap between what your system knows is true and what your life is currently holding. Maybe it's a career that doesn't match who you are, what your needs are, or it served you at one time, but it no longer ignites passion for you. Maybe it's a relationship that no longer feels right. Maybe it's not honoring your needs or boundaries. Maybe it's not showing up authentically in social situations. And when that gap exists, the body has to compensate. It has to hold tension. It has to adapt. It has to find ways to keep you functioning even when something doesn't feel right. And over time, that compensation becomes what we experience as symptoms or even pain. I'm thinking of a client I work with. She came in with chronic tension, especially through her neck and shoulders. She had tried everything: massage, stretching, workouts, supplements, and things would help temporarily, but the tension always came back in the exact same places. And as we started working together, we weren't just looking at the muscles, we were listening to her nervous system. We were looking at its patterning, tracking those patterns, noticing where her body would break, where it would hold. And over time, something really clear began to emerge. Her body would consistently tighten when she talked about work, not in an obvious, dramatic way, but subtle: a holding in her breath, a slight shift through her shoulders, a quiet contraction. And as we stayed with that, without trying to fix it, she began to recognize something. She was constantly overriding herself, saying yes when she meant no, taking on more than she had capacity for, holding a version of herself that felt responsible, reliable, together, but not true or not authentic. And her body had been holding that pattern for years, not because it was broken, but because it was adapting, because at some point that way of being was what felt safest, but it wasn't congruent anymore. And as she began to make small shifts, like setting boundaries, letting herself disappoint people, telling the truth in moments where she normally wouldn't, something started to change, not just emotionally, but physically. The tension began to unwind, not because we forced it to, but because her system no longer had to hold the same pattern of protection. I want to give you another example. I have a client that has a very difficult relationship with her sister. She has always felt a sense of competition, unease, and distrust with her sister. We were working together consistently to unwind long-term stress from caregiving, as well as old wounds and traumas. Every time she had been around her sister, we noticed how her hip would tighten, store extra tension in her low back, and what she would describe as just feeling off. When she was able to make the connection between how both her mind and body were reacting with this relationship, she was able to make shifts and changes. It didn't mean that she completely cut off the relationship with her sister, but she did set boundaries. choosing to spend limited time with her sister. She would plan time for rest and recovery after family holidays and events. Overall, she honored her needs in ways that were authentic to her healing process. This is something we see so often in network spinal analysis work. The body stores patterns of tension, not randomly, but as a reflection of how we've had to adapt to our lives. Patterns of bracing, of holding and disconnecting, patterns of how we have been conditioned to expect life to be and how we react to it. And these patterns live in the spine and in the nervous system, what we might call stored tension or stored stress, not just from big events, but from repeated moments of overriding ourselves, moments where it didn't feel safe to say what was true, to be who we were, to choose differently. And so the body learned to organize around that, to create structure around incongruency. And the longer that pattern is held, the more it begins to feel normal, even when it's not aligned. A lot of people are trying to regulate their nervous system without changing the conditions that are dysregulating it. And again, those tools matter. Breath, awareness, slowing down. But there's a deeper layer. I've worked with so many clients over the years who came in saying, I take moments to rest. I take moments to breathe, but I still keep repeating the same patterns. I still am reacting to the same situations. And their whole goal in seeing us is how can they go deeper? How can they get to that deeper layer of where they've been patterned and conditioned and start to truly authentically heal? Your nervous system doesn't just respond to what you do internally. It responds to the life that you're living. And if your life requires you to constantly override yourself, your system will stay in some level of activation, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because it doesn't feel safe to fully settle. True regulation comes from congruency, from your internal experience and your external reality beginning to match. As I like to say, who you are on the inside starts to match what is seen on the outside. I think of a client who was living what she thought would be the perfect life. She had gotten married. Within about 3 to 4 years, she had had children. She had 2 small children and was a stay-at-home mom. This is how her mom had raised her, and she thought that this would be the ideal life that she was creating. But what happened over time is she stopped sleeping well. She started to notice that she felt really anxious and her anxiety would be present first thing in the morning and would continue to build throughout the day. When she started seeing us, she hadn't slept well for over a year. She again felt anxious. She felt disconnected. She didn't feel like she was really being the mom that she wanted to be. As we started to work through her process of healing, the first part of that journey was creating safety within the nervous system, starting to release tension from the nervous system, helping her muscles, her spine move more easily, helping there to be, in general, more ease throughout her body. But as we got deeper into the process of repatterning her nervous system, what she noticed is throughout her day, she was getting more and more signals that it was time to go back to work. It was time to re-enter the workplace. That yes, it might be a challenge to be both working and parenting, but she felt ready for that shift. When she finally made that decision to go back to her career, she noticed she felt more engaged as a parent. She started to sleep better. Anxiety went away. And she felt that she was living a much more congruent. In terms of repatterning the nervous system, it wasn't just about shifting the physical symptoms. It was about moving towards a life that fit who she really was versus who she thought she should be. And this is where healing becomes very real, very human, because it's not about blowing up your life. It's about noticing, where does my body contract? Where do I feel like I'm performing instead of being? Where am I overriding something I know is true? And then very gently beginning to shift. Maybe it's saying no one time. Maybe it's pausing before automatically agreeing. Maybe it's letting your needs exist without immediately dismissing them. These are small moments, but to your nervous system, they're everything. Because each time you choose congruency, you send a signal. It's safe to be me. Healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about unraveling what isn't you, the patterns, the conditioning, the ways you learn to be in order to belong or stay safe. And as those layers begin to soften, what's underneath is something much more natural, more regulated, more you. And your body responds to that with less tension, less guarding, and more ease. So maybe instead of asking, how do I get rid of this? You begin to ask, where in my life is something not matching? Where am I living out of alignment with what I know is true? And what would it look like to take one small step back toward congruency? Because your body isn't working against you. It's been holding the map the entire time. The more you learn to listen, the more clearly it will guide you back to yourself. Thank you for spending time with me today. I hope that wherever you are in your healing journey, you leave this episode with just a little more kindness towards yourself than what you came in with. You are noticing, you are evolving, you are growing, you are moving forward, and you are exactly where you should be on this journey. And if you're ready to explore what deeper nervous system support could look like for you, I'd love to connect. You can book a wellness consultation at bodyandbalancechiropractic.com, and we'll look at what your body actually needs to heal. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs permission to move towards their authentic self. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review for the podcast. Your reviews help more people discover these conversations about healing, nervous system health, and living beyond the symptoms. Thank you for being a part of this community. Until next time, breathe deep, take time to notice, and take small or big steps to honor your authenticity. Remember, your story is still unfolding. Thanks again for joining me today on Healing Beyond the Symptoms. If you've been curious about network spinal, or if you've tried everything else and still feel stuck, I want you to know this. Your body is not broken. It's patterned, and those patterns can change. If you're ready to experience how gentle care can lead to profound transformation, I'd love to invite you to book a wellness consultation at bodyandbalancechiropractic.com. Together, we'll look at what your body needs to finally release, reset, and thrive. Until next time, breathe deep, trust your body, and remember, gentle can be powerful.